Hey, it's Jay, and this March, we took our family trip to Norway. Now, I've planned a lot of trips, and logistically, this was probably the most challenging. Norway is huge, and choosing where to go was like solving a really difficult puzzle. And what I hope to do in this video is just save you that headache, give you the highlights of our trip, let you know how we got from point A to point B, and how we maximized our 12 days in the country. We flew from Jacksonville to Charlotte to London Heathrow, finally to Oslo. I just have to quickly point out that it is such a small world. Cousin Isla was on our flight from Jacksonville to Charlotte. So random and so cool. Here's a quick summary of our trip. Oslo to Flam to Bergen to Alesund, Trondheim, and Tromsø. You'll see throughout, but these places gave us a really good taste of Norway. The Oslo airport is located northeast of the city itself, so we were able to hop on the Flyticket train and be in downtown Oslo in about 25 minutes. The Oslo train station is attached to a mall and a few hotels, and we stayed in one of those hotels called the Scandic by Porten. It was nice to not have to lug our suitcases very far, and this hotel included a really good breakfast at the Egon restaurant. Oslo was founded in 1049 by King Harald. Its name means meadow beneath the ridge. In 1299, it became the capital of Norway. In 1624, there was a bad fire that destroyed most of the city. It was renamed Christiania after King Christian IV of Denmark. In 1925, they changed it back to Oslo, and now it's a modern capital with Viking roots and a sleek design featuring green energy. When I think of Norway, I picture Viking warriors sailing far from home to explore, trade, and conquer, and a modern nation leading the world in democracy and sustainability. Norway's history is rich and resilient. Like in 1349, the Black Plague wiped out half the population. And from 1380 to 1814, the country was ruled by Denmark, until Denmark's defeat in the Napoleonic Wars. Norway briefly had independence before it was forced into a union with Sweden. Their full independence didn't come till 1905. Through centuries of hardship, the Norwegians endured and resisted. During World War II, they played a key role in sabotaging Nazi nuclear development. They were not a wealthy nation until the 1960s when everything changed. There was a massive discovery of oil and gas reserves in the North Sea. The resulting wealth transformed the country, funding universal healthcare, world-class education, and ambitious renewable energy programs. We walked a block from our hotel to the Oslo Opera House. It has a really modern design, and you can walk on ramps that lead up to the roof for really nice views of the city. The air temperature was close to freezing, but there were people cycling between sauna boats and the ice-cold water. Sauna culture in Norway has a long history, deeply intertwined with Nordic tradition of cleansing and socializing. Studies have shown that there are health benefits to alternating between the heat of the sauna and a dip in cold water, such as the sea or a fjord. We then walked along the water over to the Akershus fortress. It was first constructed in the 13th century, and it withstood numerous sieges and served as a royal residence, a prison, and an execution site. It was modernized by King Christian IV in the 1600s, and today, although a major tourist attraction, it's still patrolled by the Norwegian Armed Forces. We continued to follow the waterline around the fjord and ended up in Akerbrygge. It's an area of Oslo that used to contain shipyards and engineering industry, but in the early 1980s, it was converted into a beautiful waterfront with shopping, dining, and entertainment. We were absolutely exhausted after being up for almost 40 hours, so we grabbed a quick bite to eat at the mall near our hotel and got a good night of sleep. Food in Norway is very expensive, so it was a treat to have a nice complimentary breakfast at the Egon Hotel the next morning. We had the entire day to explore Oslo, so we headed northwest on Karl Johan's Gate, which is a historic street with restaurants, shops, and famous landmarks like the Oslo Cathedral and the Royal Palace. We eventually ended up at the Gustav Vigeland Park. The park contains many naked statues that represent the phases of life. Without clothes, there is no societal status, and therefore we can relate to each other and find common ground in the meaningful moments of life. On our hike up to the park, I brushed up against a metal post and ripped a hole in my winter jacket, so I just looked to see if there was a tailor nearby, and there happened to be one right next to the park. I dropped my jacket off, and an hour later, it was as good as new. Are we ready? Wow. Thank you so much for doing that on such short notice. Wow. Looks great.
Yeah, it will remain like this way.
Perfect. That's Perfect. Thank you so much. Once I had my jacket and the kids played on the playground for a little while, we headed south towards the Viking ship museum. Unfortunately, it was closed for renovations, but right next door is a Viking village and a cultural center, which had a ton of history on its own. For me, the coolest part was the Galstav Church. This church was originally built from 1157 to 1216 in Hallingdal, which is 100 miles from Oslo. In the 1880s, each piece of the church was taken apart, moved to Oslo, and reassembled here, and that's what we see today. It was so easy to get back. We took a bus and it dropped us off right by our hotel. We cleaned up and then went up to dinner at the Madhall in Oslo. I describe it as like a fancy food court, and they were located in all the major cities of Norway. After a great dinner, we walked home and crashed again because we had done almost 30,000 steps that day. The next morning, after another delicious breakfast, we gathered our suitcases and headed right next door to the train station. We had signed up for something called Norway in a Nutshell, which allows you to travel from Oslo to Bergen either directly that day or over several days if you choose to stop along the way. We planned to break it up over a few days, so on the Norway in a Nutshell website, we picked exactly where we wanted to get off, how long we wanted to stay there, and if we wanted to add any excursions. It's a pretty cool a la carte setup. So the first leg of the trip was on the Bergen Railway. Unfortunately, there was a power outage at one of the Oslo control stations, and it delayed our trip by about 2 hours. But on the positive side, we met a couple, Kate and Aaron, from Australia, and became friends the rest of the trip. We took what might have been the most beautiful train ride on Earth, through white blanketed mountains and quiet valleys. We changed trains in Myrdal. And then took about a 45-minute ride into Flam. Flam has been an agricultural and trading site since Viking times. It means little place between steep mountains. It became very popular once the Flam Railway was constructed between the 1920s and 1940s. It's located right on the Alesund fjord, and today it's a major stop for cruise ships and fjord tourism. Flam kind of felt like it was preserved in time. There's only 2 major hotels in town. We stayed in Flam 2 nights, but I had to split our nights between the 2 hotels, which was kind of cool because we got to experience both. We checked into the Flam's Brygge Hotel, made a dinner reservation at the Eiger Brew Pub, and set off on a hike to Brekkafossen Waterfall, only about 2.5 kilometers away from town. Eiger Brew Pub was so good that we ate there both nights. The next morning we started exploring the fjords with a hike in the snowy mountains above Alesund, led by our guides Irvin and Anton. They were absolutely wonderful, and we learned that the Norwegian mountain code is printed on the inside of their very own popular trail food called Quick Lunch, which translates to quick lunch, but it's also really just a Kit Kat.
Everybody, let's give a hand to our guide trainee.
Wow.
Take with you emergency equipment for yourself and for others.
We were also reminded how small the world really is because Anton used to be a glacier guide in Iceland and happened to be friends with our Iceland glacier guide, Mary, from 2 years ago. At the end of the hike, we stopped at the Stegestein, a beautiful vista of the UNESCO World Heritage Site called Norway Fjord. The rest of the day, we enjoyed hiking, eating, and exploring Flam. Oh, and we also moved over to the Trondheim Hotel, which was really nice. Both hotels included breakfast with our stay. In the morning, we picked up the next leg of our Norway in a nutshell journey. We traveled by boat through the fjords, from Flam to Bergen. We then hopped on a coach bus and headed to Voss, where we picked up a train to Bergen. We sadly had to say goodbye to our friends Kate and Aaron. And once we got to Bergen, we checked into our center city apartment and started to explore. Bergen was founded in 1070 by King Olaf III. It was a major trade port during the Middle Ages and is one of Norway's most culturally rich cities, also known as the gateway to the fjords. It was Norway's largest city until the 1830s when it was overtaken by Oslo. It's unique because it's a city located on the fjords, but it's surrounded by 7 mountains. So after a really good lunch, we made our way down to Bergen, which is an old historical wharf, where most of the wooden buildings are over 500 years old, and some parts date back to 1,000 years. Over the years, this city's been plagued with fires, but this area happens to be one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. That night, we spontaneously decided to do an escape room in one of the wooden houses with sloping floors and hundreds of years of history, making it such a unique experience. A quick shout out to Escape Bergen. The following day, we checked out of our apartment, and the owners were really nice to give us a place to store our bags for the day. We logged over 20,000 steps walking and hiking the city of Bergen. We had some breakfast at the Albatrossen before hiking to the summit of Mount Ulriken, one of the 7 mountains that surround Bergen. Kitty wants to be your friend. Coming on a walk with us. Yeah, actually you could put a tarp over this. You had a tarp. And then you could sleep right under here, nice and dry. Caleb did his own 25-minute GoPro commentary.
Still a little bit more to go. It's really cool. Look, there's a little bit of a bridge.
As our altitude increased, the rain turned to snow. It's awesome. There's the finish. We're almost there. Made it. After a good snack at the top of the mountain, we took the cable car down and then the local train back to city center to further explore the old town. Late afternoon, we grabbed our bags and we boarded the Hurtigruten MS Vesteralen. The cruise ship became our hotel, and for the next 2 nights, we sailed up the coast of Norway. The cruise ship was expensive because we had to get 2 cabins for a family of 5, but it was really convenient because while we were sleeping, we were traveling to our next destination. Prior to the cruise, we purchased breakfast on the ship so we could eat before exploring the next town. We had just 10 hours in Alesund, but it was one of the most meaningful stops of our trip. The town may be modern in design, but it has deep roots. Alesund existed as a fishing village for centuries before becoming an official town in 1848. In 1904, a massive fire destroyed nearly the entire city. Over 850 buildings burned in one night. Amazingly, Alesund was rebuilt within a few years in bold Art Nouveau style. This made it a town unlike anywhere else in Norway. We began our day with a personal connection, visiting the statue of Rollo, a Viking chieftain believed to be born near here. If you ever saw the show Vikings, he's Ragnar Lothbrok's brother, which isn't true in real life, but he did sail from the fjords to northern France and founded the Duchy of Normandy. Rollo's descendants include William the Conqueror, and as a direct descendant of William ourselves, visiting there felt like a glimpse into our own family history. From there, we tackled the 418 steps up to the Axkala viewpoint. The views of Alesund's islands and fjords were absolutely beautiful, and instead of stopping there, we kept hiking past the summit along the ridgeline. Back in town, we wandered through Alesund's canal district before catching a bus over to the aquarium. Just a side note, the bus doesn't drop you right off of the entrance, so you need to walk about a half a mile from the bus stop. If you're short on time, I'd recommend an Uber or a taxi. The aquarium turned out to be one of the highlights. We caught the feeding time for the sea otters, the seals, the penguins, and explored beautifully designed tanks and interactive exhibits. The whole staff was wonderful too.
Whoa, look at this sea star. Whoa, guys, look.
No, I gotta touch it. There, Lila, I touched the crab for you.
Oh, look, he's trying to get me with his tiny claws.
Wild as possible. So that's the reason why you can hunt. So I said that they are semi-aquatic, but that means they also are excellent swimmers. And Theo, he's the easiest to see because he is the fattest. This is Odin, and this is Turbo. And Turbo, he's the youngest one. So they can actually, if they want to dive down, they can actually swim for 20 kilometers an hour underneath water.
Afterward, we bussed back to town and had dinner at Molo Brew. They had some pretty good craft beer. We wrapped up the day with some ice cream, and then it was time to board the ship again. Overnight, we sailed to Trondheim. Trondheim was founded in 997 by Viking King Olaf I. Nidaros Cathedral was built over the tomb of Saint Olaf, the patron saint of Norway. It was an important pilgrimage site through the Middle Ages. Trondheim is also still home to Norway's royal coronations. Turns out there was a lot of truth in that movie, Frozen. We said goodbye to our cruise ship in Trondheim. We said goodbye to our cruise ship in Trondheim, and with our suitcases, in hand, we walked about a mile over to the Radisson Blu. It's a beautiful hotel right on the river. Our first stop was the Nidaros Cathedral, which is the northernmost medieval cathedral in the world. This site is so significant because it's built over Saint Olaf, who's also known as Olaf Haraldsson or King Olaf II. He was the last Viking king who helped unite and Christianize Norway before dying in battle in 1030. Miracles were said to follow his death, and he was quickly declared a saint. So for centuries, this became the most important pilgrimage site in Northern Europe. Next door, we toured the Archbishop's Palace and visited Norway's Royal Regalia, which is housed in a secure underground vault. These are the actual crown jewels that are used in the coronations. From there, we wandered across the Old Town Bridge and into the colorful Baklama district. It was all so beautiful along the river. We grabbed lunch at a cafe and then headed up the hill to Christiansand Fortress, which was built in the late 1600s to defend the city after a devastating fire. The panoramic view from the top made the uphill hike worth every step. We kept walking south until we came upon the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. It looked like a pretty cool place. I really felt Trondheim had a great mix of historic and modern. We looped back towards the hotel, cleaned up, and had dinner at an amazing Indian restaurant called Namaste Norge. Norway is known for its seafood, and we had plenty, but this meal was a really nice surprise. The next morning, we enjoyed one of the best hotel breakfasts of the trip and spent some time strolling the city streets again. We found a few playgrounds, did some shopping, and visited parks like Stiftsgardsparken, just enjoying Trondheim's relaxed pace. By late morning, it was time to catch our bus to the airport and fly north, really far north, to Tromso, our next Arctic adventure on the 70th parallel. We landed, picked up our rental car, and tried not to break any bones slipping across the sheet of ice that was the parking lot. Welcome to the Arctic Circle. We checked into the Thon Hotel Polar in downtown Tromso and were blown away that a city this large even exists this far north. Tromso sits nearly 220 miles above the Arctic Circle, but it's long been a hub of activity. Once a center for Arctic hunting and polar exploration, Tromso was known as the gateway to the Arctic. Famous explorers started their expeditions here. Today, it's a thriving university city with research, fishing, and tourism, keeping it very much alive. That evening, we had dinner at Restaurant Skiri, right on the water. The food was traditional and delicious, and the manager was amazing with the kids. After dinner, we set out to chase the northern lights. We drove past the iconic Arctic Cathedral, a striking piece of modern design shaped like a shard of ice. We tried to take the Fjords cable car for a view above the city, but the winds were too strong and it was shut down for the night. So we just kept driving east, away from the city, into the darker skies. The aura forecast, or the KP index, hit a 7, which is very rare, but unfortunately the clouds didn't agree with us. We saw nothing, just snow. It was a good reminder that we really don't have control. The next morning, after a delicious hotel breakfast, we drove west, leaving Tromso behind and heading towards the tiny island village of Sommarøy. Along the way, we stopped just to play and hike in the snow.
Just take your glasses off. We tried to rent cross-country skis, but everything was fully booked. So the lesson here is reserve in advance, even in the Arctic. Our seaside cabin sat right at the edge of the Arctic Ocean, with crystal clear water that looked more like the Caribbean than northern Norway. We even found coral. It turns out there's reefs this far north. That night, the skies finally cleared, and we saw a pretty magical show. We had seen the aurora in Iceland before, but this was a completely unique experience. I'm hooked and definitely want to see him again. On our last day, we took a scenic route back to Tromso, and were lucky enough to spot several herds of reindeer along the road. We felt it was a pretty fitting farewell to the far north. We flew back to Oslo and stayed at the Quality Airport Hotel, nestled between a frozen lake and quiet trails. That evening, we hiked into the nearby town of Jessheim for one last Norwegian dinner. And just like that, our journey came to an end. We were tired but extremely grateful. Norway gave us beauty, challenge, and wonder, but more than that, it gave us stories for a lifetime. Every person we met, every guide, waiter, hiker, and stranger had something unique to share, and we'll carry their stories with ours for many years to come. Until next time.
It's just such a nice mountain. And you can see the city down there. The city's really big.
That is why I hold your hand. Safe. Pretty cool that it's snowing.